Al, welcome committee.
Good morning, committee. I am Kyle Anderson with the KLRD, fiscal analyst, and I will be presenting the Department of Transportation budget. We are going to be starting on volume 2, page 61, and page 30 of the green handouts.
Okay, Kyle, you said 61 in the
Correct.
30
30 in the greens.
green and
61 in volume
61 on the volume 2. Okay. Please proceed.
So starting on page 61, you can see the 3-year breakdown. The 2025 agency adjusted budget request is for $2.56 billion. The Legislative Budget Committee cut out about $6 million of that. The agency's request for 2026 is $1.68 billion, and the Legislative Budget Committee cut about $8 million from that. Proceeding to page 63, the agency has no SGF reappropriations and no supplemental requests. The LBC did remove other changes, items number 7 and 9 for additional FTE items. The House has added those back in, and if you look on your yellow sheet with respect to the Department of Transportation, you'll note that the governor's request also adds these 2 items back in. The House ultimately elected to follow the same recommendation that the governor had made for both years. And the end result of that is the original agency request of $2.56 billion for 2025. The 2 items that were removed by the LBC and added back by the House are regular maintenance and construction inspection, salaries and wages. These are additional employee positions that they are requesting for completing some of the tasks that they anticipate needing those extra employees for on the IKE program. Carrying on to page 68, the fiscal year 2026 breakdown. Again, the agency has no enhancement requests for fiscal year 2026. The LBC removed other changes, items 4, 6, 8, 9, and 10. The regular maintenance, construction inspection, administration, design right-of-way, and Office of the Secretary salaries and wages request positions. As with fiscal year 2025, both the House and the governor recommendation re-added these. As with the 2 items that were removed and re-added in fiscal year 2025, these are increases in employment for anticipated need due to the ongoing projects of the IKE program. Are there any questions on fiscal year 2025 and 2026?
Questions on 25 or 26? Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at 26, could you talk about the significant decrease? We're talking about $1 billion less, and remind me again, maybe I missed it, what that's attributable to.
Certainly. So the way that the Department of Transportation budget works is that when a program within IKE is actually let for construction, the entire portion of that project is budgeted in that year. And so in subsequent years, where there are less letting projects, the budget appears depressed from years where there are substantial letting, as well due to the way that the bonding process happens within the budget to prevent double counting of the bonds. Some of that money is also subtracted out to depress the budget.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that explanation.
Other questions? Seeing none?
There is, I believe, some capital improvements related items starting on page 74 that you may want to look through, but it's largely associated with their regularly scheduled rehab and repair of buildings and facilities.
And that's page 74, Kyle.
Yes, sir.
Anyone have any questions on page 74? Just give us a minute here, Kyle. We'll make sure that everybody has a chance to look at 74. Any questions for Kyle? Seeing none, thank you, Kyle. Next, we'll have the agency presentation with Secretary Calvin Reed. Calvin, welcome committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Appreciate the opportunity today to discuss the KDOT budget. Rather than go over our complete budget, I really appreciate Kyle's summary. I'm just going to hit some high points and what I would consider our priorities as you guys are evaluating the sub for HB 2007. So since I don't have a presentation up on the screen, you guys should have the presentation in front of you. I was just going to alert you, we have two substitutions in the presentation, page 5 and page 7 are substitutions that we provided for you this morning. So we've got three priorities that I want to discuss. And bottom line first is, it's going to take continued partnership between the legislature and KDOT and the governor to continue to delivering on what we've been able to deliver so far in the IKE transportation program. There's been a lot of progress. I really appreciate Senator Owen's question about why is there a differential. Our fiscal year 2025 was a big year for us in terms of project lettings. We had the South Lawrence Trafficway, we had Polk Quincy Viaduct, and we had a big bridge project in Kansas City, all let this year. So we had a large construction budget this year. Next year, we are balancing that out a little bit, not having quite as much letting because we're going to have so much work in progress. There is a lot to be done still left in the program. So if you'll go to page 4 of the presentation, that is the discussion on the first priority. So just a reminder on the IKE transportation program. It is a 10-year comprehensive transportation program. Comprehensive meaning it is more than just highways and bridges. We are funding improvements for communities. We are also funding just improvements on our multimodal system. Also, as a reminder, the IKE program did not have a set of projects that were identified. Instead, the legislature gave us priorities that they wanted us to accomplish through the program. So those priorities: finish T-Works. There was a lot of projects that were left over from our previous program. We needed to finish those first. We accomplished that very early on, about $500 million worth of work to complete those delayed T-Works projects. Preservation of our existing system. We need to make sure we are taking care of what we have. We have a large transportation system in Kansas. It takes a lot of funding to maintain it. We need to make sure we continue maintaining it and we do not fall behind on that maintenance. Strategic investment in modernization and expansion of the system. we have a process, our local consult process, feeding into our development and construction pipeline to be able to select projects that will strategically modernize and expand our system, and then continue to invest in community. So community assistance programs to really help even the smallest communities in Kansas be able to make meaningful improvements to their transportation systems. Also, as a reminder, you'll see on your slide there that we have $9.9 billion put in there. That was the original estimate of the program. I'm going to say again, that was the original estimate of the program based on the funding streams that you had allocated to this program. So if you think back to 2020, the financial picture then was a lot different looking ahead than what we've seen the first 4 years. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the differences and why it's important to our first priority. So next, the next page, look at how we fund transportation. All right, you see all the funding sources that feed into the state highway fund. Motor fuels tax is a significant one, and you can see that it actually gets diverted. About 33% of that goes to the Special City and County Highway Fund. 66% goes to the State Highway Fund. And then you can see how it flows out of the State Highway Fund. And really two main buckets. We have transfers. I'm going to talk a little bit about the transfers later on and how they're important. And then what I would call our KDOT budget, or that is the money that we get to go out and invest in our state and our communities on the transportation system. Next page. A little bit about the performance through the first 4 years of the program. Like I said, it's been very dynamic. We had a major pandemic. We've had rampant inflation. All of those have come to give us a different financial picture now than what we would have expected in 2020. So if you look at our revenue streams through the first 4 years of the program, this is to the end of fiscal year 2024, you'll see that overall, the revenue coming into the State Highway Fund was about 18% more than we had anticipated. And that was really from two major factors. Sales tax revenues were higher, about $500 million more than what we would have anticipated, and federal fund reimbursements were also significantly higher, about $415 million than what we would have anticipated. You know, there's reasons for those. A new federal appropriation program, the IIJA is the main reason why federal fund reimbursements are more. And then, of course, sales tax, we were encouraged to go out and purchase through a lot of money put into the economy. We went out and purchased, and so we got more sales tax revenue out of that. Just as a reminder, KDOT does not, or the State Highway Fund does not collect the entire sales tax revenue. Right now, we collect 18% of every sales tax dollar that comes to Kansas. I also want to point to that there are no bonds shown on this graph. We had not bonded through the first 4 years of the program. Fiscal year 25 was our first year of bonding. We put out $200 million of bonds last year. We expect to bond this year. We're going to call for $400 million of bond in fiscal year 26 also. Overall in the program, we had originally estimated to have $1.2 billion worth of bonding to be able to successfully complete the program. So we are still trying to hold to that number. We think it's responsible to try to keep bonding as low as possible because any bonding that we do in this program takes an impact on future programs. So we want to make sure that we are being responsible with bonding and try to minimize that as much as possible, but doing enough to be able to make sure we are delivering on the program. Next slide. So this page shows what our cost trend has been. As I said before, revenue is about 18% higher. But you can see that construction costs have well outpaced our revenue, right? So through the first 4 years of the program, we're seeing right now about 60% higher costs than what we saw in 2020. But really what you need to think about is how much more are those costs than what we would have estimated back in 2020? And you'll see that red line on the graph. That red line indicates that costs are about 40% more now than what we would have estimated that they were going to be at this time in 2020. So that's significant because that is a lot more costly projects. We've got more revenue, but we're not filling that gap completely. So what we are doing strategically as leadership, we are looking at what levers do we have to be able to control costs? First of all, we want to make sure we're doing that, but making sure that we are also delivering on the priorities that the legislature gave us for the IKE program. We're looking at possibilities of bringing in additional revenues. So we've been successful in applying for federal grants. Those federal grants in fiscal year 24 brought in about $200 million more revenue. And then we're also looking at the possibility for bonding if we need to be able to complete the program. Next slide. Another significant portion of our budget, as you saw, was transfers out. So this graph shows you kind of transfers out of the State Highway Fund over time. If you'll remember back, we had what we called extraordinary transfers and ordinary transfers. Ordinary transfers are those that really go to help support the mission of transportation in Kansas. So other agencies help us deliver on that mission. And so transferring out from the State Highway Fund to those agencies makes a lot of sense. Extraordinary transfers really had nothing to do with delivering on the mission of transportation. It was really all about balancing budgets, right? I'm happy to say that really for the last 2 years, we have not had any extraordinary transfers. And that is thanks to Governor Kelly and you guys working together to try to make sure that we keep those transfers to a minimum, because any money that is transferred out of the State Highway Fund to accomplish those other goals is money that we cannot spend, invest on our state highway system. So it's extremely important that we keep those transfers low. And we appreciate that House Bill 2007 provides a responsible number for the transfers coming out of the State Highway Fund. Moving on, our budget priority number 2. Just as a reminder, I'm on slide or page 10 now. Our budget structure is really broken into 2 pieces. One of them is our agency operations budget, which is what you guys appropriate. There is an actual appropriation language for our agency operations budget. The other is, I'll say, our construction budget. And that is all those functions that it takes to deliver a construction project. That is not appropriated. That is not limited by appropriations, but it is limited by cash flow, right? So we have to manage cash flow throughout the life of a 10-year program, revenues coming in, expenses going out, making sure we always have money to pay the bills. And so we manage that, and that's how we strategically plot out our programs when we're going to let our projects, making sure that we always have cash to support the payment for those projects. Next slide. You'll see you will see what the appropriation looks like out of HB 2007 for fiscal year 26. And next slide, you'll see our agency operations budget over time, what you guys have approved. And you can see that there has been a slight ramp up in agency operations through the first 4 years of the program. And really that, when you compare that ramp up, that's about 15% more than what it was in 2020. The 2024 budget, it's about 15% more than what it was in 2020. You know, that is nowhere near what construction costs have been. We have been able to manage our agency operations to be able to maintain our system and to be able to deliver the IKE program. I think we have managed very well, and we continue to manage that budget tightly. So if you look at our second priority, it's really 2 pieces. First of all, we would request that the $344 million agency operations that is shown in HB 2007 be maintained. We think it is absolutely necessary, especially after this snow and ice season. It was a pretty costly snow and ice season, not a lot of events, but very big events across the state that were pretty costly. We need to make sure that we keep the funding in there so that we can continue to fund our agency operations with that large snow and ice season this year. In addition, we would ask that we hold our FTEs at what presented in the HB 2007, and which is what we had for fiscal year 24, which is 2288.75. Once again, it's important to maintain that number. We have been able to recruit and had a little more success in recruiting and retaining. We're starting to build up staff in some of our kind of harder to service areas. And so I think we're going to obviously need to be able to continue to do that, and we need to continue to keep up that momentum. So I would just ask kindly that those 2 numbers stay true to what they are in HB 2007. Moving on to our budget priority number 3. This is a similar argument for fiscal year 2026. If you're on page 16, you can see our headcount versus our approved FTE over time. We went through several years where our headcount was nowhere near our approved FTE, and our approved FTE continued to drop. Those were, just because we were not able to hire those positions did not mean that we did not need those positions. We have been able to hire and retain some of those positions the last couple of years, and we have grown. And you can see that by the beginning of fiscal year 25, we were within about 1% of headcount of our approved FTE. But we still have holes that we need to fill in many parts of the state, especially maintenance positions and construction inspection positions. So we want the ability to continue to recruit and retain, employees to those hard-to-fill positions. And so if you look at the next slide, it'll show you kind of how we see breaking those FTEs down. Most of them are going to be on our maintenance side. So those are our highway maintenance workers that are out there plowing the snow, mowing the right-of-way, maintaining our right-of-way. And then also our construction inspectors, which are really in charge of oversight and responsible for accountability for our contractors. So we had asked for a number that was brought down in HB 2007. We would just ask that that number that is shown in HB 2007 of 2345, we would ask that that FTE count, we'd be allowed to fill up to that amount in fiscal year 26. And next slide, slide 19 is the one I'm on right now. And if you look at that, you look at our agency operations budget, $348 million to really support additional funding to support those additional positions is what was requested and is what is in HB 2007. We would ask that that be retained also. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I tried to go through it quickly. In case you had questions, I would be happy to answer any questions you might have or to provide any more clarity.
Thank you, Calvin. Questions? Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have a couple of questions. Thank you for being here, Mr. Secretary. It's always great to get to speak with you and to understand kind of what's going on. So two questions and one comment. So first, why bond? You just showed that we're $1 billion over estimates thus far for this 4 years into the program. Why are we talking about bonding anything if our revenues are up so much?
Thank you for the question. May I respond?
Yes, please.
Thank you for the question. Well, two pieces to that, right? So our revenues are up, but like I said, construction prices have well outpaced our revenues. So yes, we are able to spend more money, but we are not delivering as much scope as what we would have anticipated. So it is costing us 40% more on average to deliver our projects. So if we do not bond, we will not be able to deliver as many projects.
Okay, thank you very much for that, if I may, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
So the comment that I had, first of all, I was really impressed to see that your agency budget for operations over the last 10 years has actually been below inflation, which is quite remarkable. We don't see that very often in here. So certainly want to commend you on making that happen for the part that you played in that. Why so many new FTEs? 63 new FTEs requested for 2026 is roughly the number. Like, what would they perform that we haven't been performing that has been negative to the citizens of Kansas that hasn't been dealt with over the last 5 to 10 years?
Mr. Secretary, go ahead.
Well, thank you for that. As I said, we have been able to fill, in certain places, we have been very successful in filling our maintenance shops. In some places, we still need employees in our maintenance shops to be able to successfully deliver. So there are things that are not getting done right now in certain areas of the state. We are doing the bare minimum. To be able to do what we think is responsible, we need to be able to fill those positions, fill those shops to the level that we expect them to be able to do the work out on our highways.
Senator Owens.
I appreciate that. I'm just very concerned. I know we have fantastic roads in Kansas, and we're incredibly blessed for that. You don't have to go too far to see what poor road management looks like on a state level. So, but my concern, again, is this continual desire of government to grow, right? We realize that more full-time employees will ultimately benefit more people in one way or another, but at some point, we have got to say, look, we have enough full-time employees in this state, especially when we're ranked third per capita for the number of public employees in Kansas. I would argue, and I do argue regularly, that we may need to look at repurposing some positions that are unfilled. But the idea of adding new FTEs, it certainly gives me some heartburn. So thank you for that.
Mr. Secretary, you like to respond?
Yeah, just one comment on it. In general, I agree with what you said. I think the challenge is when you are talking about our maintenance staff that are very geography dependent. Southwest Kansas, for instance, is a place where we have really struggled to be able to hire maintenance staff. If we could hire maintenance staff to fill some holes in there, we would be able to do more on those highways and be able to, maybe lessen the amount of construction that we have to do. If we can maintain it, then it keeps it from becoming a project down the road. If you look back at that graph and look back in time, we are really just asking for staffing to be built back to what it was about 12 years ago. We went through a period where we were not able to hire, and we really shrunk our footprint. So we are just looking to get back, not continual growth, just responsible growth to the level that makes sense for what we're trying to deliver.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
Secretary, thank you for being here. You mentioned about 60% higher costs than in 2020. I'm just wondering, so as you look at this and the costs are going up, are you, with the changing environment right now, are you projecting that that's going to continue, or are you with the materials that you need and the resources?
Mr. Secretary.
Thank you for that question. Yeah, we do expect costs to go up. We have seen some signs recently that prices are starting to, I'll say, normalize. I won't say level out, but normalize. However, I will say there are some curveballs out there right now that are hard to predict. We don't know what the current administration is going to do with tariffs. And that could potentially have a huge impact on the cost for us to deliver a project. And then obviously workforce is still, it's a very volatile component of what we do. If we have the workers to be able to do it, we can do it efficiently. If not, our contractors are going to have to pay more for those workers to come in and get that work done. That will also drive prices up. So I guess if you're asking me to look into the crystal ball, to 2030, we think we have a path right now. That path has very little margin for error. If tariffs go up, if prices continue to go up, if revenues go down, if more money is transferred away, then there are projects that will likely have to be sacrificed in this program.
Senator Petty.
This is a follow-up. So of the projects that you have in place right now, how many of them are on target completion date?
Yes.
Secretary.
Yeah. So all of our projects that we have in our construction pipeline for our modernization expansion projects are on target to be completed. We have committed to those. It is really about what projects will we have the ability to move from our development pipeline into our construction pipeline that we feel like we can commit to construction. Right now, we have numbers and we are monitoring, and we hope to have, by the end of this year, we hope to have an announcement where we can move projects out of our development pipeline into our construction pipeline.
Senator Petty.
I know two projects in my area, but so they're all on target. You mean, I'm saying, have any of them, like the Turn Diana had delays? Have any of them had delays so that they're pushed out further, which would, it seems that would increase your costs?
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, so we have delayed a few projects for several reasons. We've had some right-of-way purchasing issues. We have utility relocation issues. And then really just to make sure our cash flow makes sense, we have delayed several projects that were set to be let in fiscal year 26. We have spread them out to fiscal year 27.
Other questions? Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary, for your review here. It seems like a while back, and these sessions seem to overlap, but you had, I believe it was you, unless it was your predecessor, but I just remember there was some type of a chart or based on the FTEs regionally where in the state those needs were brought out, and if you ever did anything from that that's been more updated now?
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we did a study in 2019 to look at just our maintenance operations and what really was the responsible staffing level for maintenance operations. And that provided a number for all of our area shops and sub-area shops all across the state. And what I'll say is we saw the number. We knew we were not going to be able to get there anytime soon. Right now, we are holding to about 75% of that recommended number. There are still, like I said, gaps all across the state. Some of our shops are full. Some of them might only have one or two people in them.
Senator Cluse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So you don't have anything updated since then or that we could look at, or do you?
We can provide
Secretary.
that. Yeah, we can provide that information.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to see that.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it relates, Mr. Secretary, to efficiencies, cost savings, keeping FTEs down, keeping maintenance costs down, how aggressively does the department look to, I'm going to back up. There are a lot of right-of-ways, highway right-of-ways that are fairly extensive, and it takes equipment, man-hours, and cost to mow, maintain. How aggressively does the agency seek ag producers to keep those mowed and allow them to use the grass for hay or whatever they should? It just seems as though there are times when I see KDOT mowing and I think, well, that would be better if a producer, ag producer, was actually cutting the hay and baling it and using it. How aggressively? Do you have very many agreements with ag producers?
Mr. Secretary.
Short answer is yes, we do have agreements, and it's really kind of regionally based. We can give you an idea of how much we allow on our right-of-way. I would say we're not aggressive about it. We don't go out and advertise it about it, but if a farmer comes up to us and asks if we would be willing to do that, and it makes sense for us and it does not pose a safety risk, then we would typically be willing to do that, and we would be putting an agreement in place with them.
Senator Peck.
Why aren't you a little more aggressive in trying to get these right-of-ways taken care of by our producers? I just don't understand it because I see it as saving taxpayer money.
Mr. Secretary.
Well, it's something we can look at. I can't answer why we have not been more aggressive about it. I will say that there is a safety risk with having implements that are not ours on our right-of-way, having potentially bales of hay sitting out on our right-of-way. So we need to take those into consideration. I don't have a good answer why we have not been more aggressive about it. We can go back and take a look and see what our policies are and where those came from, if that makes sense for you.
Senator Peck.
Question, as it relates to right-of-ways and land owned by KDOT, do you have an inventory of land owned by the agency? Because I'm going to presume, without seeing, that you've probably got some land that you don't really need, that would be better if it was disposed of and owned by a private property owner.
Mr. Secretary.
Yes, we do have right-of-way that we purchased at one time, and maybe there was a need then, that need disappeared, and we have a process. In fact, we bring that information to, I believe it's the Joint Committee on Building and Construction, about our right-of-way disposal process. And so every year we do dispose of, or we transfer through auction properties back to local landowners.
Okay, I was, Mr. Chairman, unaware that you had that process, but thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. I was wondering, do you guys ever consider timing? And what I mean by that is that when you hit a year or you see a year coming up where you're having trouble getting employees or your costs are high, what you was talking about, or competitive contracts because everybody's out busy,
Yep.
to kind of back off of that and then take years where people's looking for jobs and contractors are looking because you've got a lot of money and a lot of contract. I just wonder if you ever kind of look at that or you just drive through and say, this is what we got to do.
Mr. Secretary.
Well, for the most part, we try to have a plan, and we try to be flexible in that plan. And that's why, thankful for how the Ike Transportation Program is set up, because you guys give us a lot of flexibility to adjust schedules as we see things like cost increases coming, right? It's only as good as your crystal ball, right? You can pause a project right now, assuming that prices might be better next year or that workload or that staffing might be better next year. But what if it's not better next year? So you kind of have to hedge a bet. And we try to do our best, educated guesses. We work with our contractors to identify how much work they have out there right now. I mean, it is a complex relationship, as you might imagine. We try to do our best to estimate, to look into the future.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other thing, I was at a meeting one time and your predecessor had a chart that was talking about cost was going to go up and the quality was going to go down. Do you believe that, or that just hit me and always stuck in my mind? So you might comment on that as far as cost for road construction and stuff.
Mr. Secretary.
Yeah, well, costs have gone up. I think costs will continue to go up, but we are trying to get meaningful projects out there that will help maintain or improve the condition of our highway system. Be happy to show or present to you guys sometime about our current pavement metrics, so you can see what the performance has been, what we think it might be going into the future. But yeah, we are tracking that and monitoring that closely.
Other questions? Seeing none, thank you, Calvin, for being here today. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman.
Committee, I'd also point out we have written only by Michael White and Steve Carney from the Kansas Contractors Association. There's a sheet in your packet. Next, we will move on to budget report outs. We'll start out with Senator Peck, Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources, the Kansas Department of Agriculture. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I appreciate the advice I was given from one of my colleagues on this committee and also on the Agriculture Committee. He suggested that I give lengthy speeches on each one of these agency budgets. Okay, maybe he didn't. I misunderstood what he said. And I'm not certain, Mr. Chairman, because I haven't seen in Ways and Means. Do you want me to just report what the Ag Committee recommendation is?
Yes, and if you want to highlight anything on it ahead of that, you're more than welcome to. Leave that up to you, Senator.
I trust that the committee has the information in front of them. And on the Department of Agriculture, as it relates to fiscal year 2025, we concurred with the House Committee of the Whole's recommendation, so we made no adjustments there. And do you want me to hit both years at the same time, or are you going to need a motion between?
You know what, if you want to do them both same time, or you want to do motion, I'll leave that up to you, whatever you're more comfortable with.
25 is going to be fairly simple on most
Okay.
of these.
Okay, well, if you want to make a motion, we'll do away with 25 and then move on 26.
So I would make a motion that we adopt the Ag Committee report for fiscal year 25 for the Department of Agriculture.
Correct.
Okay. That would be my motion.
Okay, and we have a second by Senator Alley. Any questions or discussion on 2025? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have 2026. Senator Peck.
All right, we'll go to 2026, and I have page 5. I am hoping that what I have is the same as what the committee has on the Budget Committee report for the Department of Agriculture, the very last page, that we concur with the Senate Ways and Means Committee recommendation for 2026 with the following adjustments. Delete 1.5 million state water plan fund for conservation districts aids for 2026. This will, I will throw in a little commentary every so often, Mr. Chairman. This will leave $3.5 million in this fund. And one reason we're deleting number 1 is that is above the agency request. Number 2, delete $1.5 million from the state water plan fund for the conservation reservation enhancement program for 2026. And that money goes from here to the state water plan for John Redmond. And then number 3, delete $750,000 state water plan money for water resources cost share, including $500,000 for irrigation conservation efficiency programs and $250,000 for livestock production facilities to improve water efficiency for fiscal year 2026. Again, that is we deleted that because that is above the agency request. It was added in by the House. Number 4 is also above the agency request, but that is to delete $650,000 of state water plan fund for watershed dam construction for fiscal year 26. Number 5, delete $900,000 state general fund for the local farm to food program for 2026. Just briefly on this program, this is something that the federal government had implemented and was funding money, and then they decided last year to just pull their funding, walk away from it. The legislature decided, the Kansas legislature decided to put $900,000 in, sort of as a one-time, Mr. Chairman, but as is frequently the case, they just sort of then become a part of the base. And so we decided that this is not a program that the government should be involved in. Let local farm programs stand on their own. Basically, these would be like for food banks and so forth. Number 6, delete $50,000 state general fund for emergency animal shelters for fiscal year 2026. The agency, this is just a really underutilized program is the way that I would classify it. Number 7, add $1.1 million of EDIF, Economic Development Initiative funds for agriculture marketing for 2026. And this is designed to promote agriculture across the country, and this is primarily for salaries. Then number 8, the committee requests the Senate Ways and Means Committee review the salary for the state's Future Farmers of America director and explore ways to increase the director's salary through the Department of Education's budget for 2026. Interesting, this is an education position, but it's funded through the Department of Agriculture. So the committee said, well, rather than deal with it through the Department of Agriculture, it's in education, let education pay for the director. And we also think that a salary bump would be beneficial. Then finally, the committee notes that some employees, and this, Mr. Chairman, goes to the Ways and Means global motion to require employees to come back into the office, but the committee notes that some state employees work in non-traditional spaces, and consideration be given to these types of positions when considering return to work policies. Again, we've got individuals who work for the Department of Agriculture. They don't have an office. They don't go in an office. They do field work. So it was just kind of a note that we need to make sure that whatever language we have is not going to cause people that don't need an office, don't go to office, to come back to an office. And with that, I don't know if you want me to stand for questions or make a motion.
If you want to make the motion.
I would make a motion that we adopt the Senate Agriculture and Natural Resources report on the budget for the Department of Agriculture for fiscal year 2026.
I have a motion, second by Senator Fagg. Questions on 2026? Senator Owens.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at this document, it's a little bit difficult to read kind of all of the changes, but the one thing, specific question for you, Senator, on the adding 1.1 million EDIF for ag marketing, is this new money? Is this enhancement to an already budget line item? And you mentioned that this is for salaries? So just a little bit more information on the 1.1 add.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you will remember, Senator, this committee made a motion to delete all EDIF funds. So there is no funding. So the committee just said that we would like to see put that funding back in of EDIF for the agency. And yes, it's promoting agriculture across the state and across the nation, not so much just the state, but across the nation. And we do have, my understanding is 10 FTEs that this is their primary responsibility, is make Kansas agriculture attractive. Well, I guess it's not only just in the United States, it would probably be across the world in places, right? Okay, he doesn't know.
Senator Owens.
So just to follow up on that, the 1.1 million is what was, is that 2025's EDIF that was requested in 2026? We deleted it, so you're just adding back the exact same amount.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions? Senator Petty.
Senator, you mentioned that these items, or I think the bulk of them, but not all of the items were enhancements. Is that correct?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm not 100% certain I follow your question. Could I get the question asked again, please?
Senator Petty.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, I thought you had said that these items that were deleted were not in the department's initial budget, but they were enhancements to that budget.
Senator Peck.
Thank you. I understand the question. Number 1, 3, and 4 were money that the House put in that were above the agency's request. So the agency basically just dropped back down to, or the committee dropped back down to the agency request. We don't know why the House put that money in, and that was something that we trust that our conferees will learn in conference if we follow this recommendation.
Senator Petty.
So number 4, but wasn't number 4 in the agency's request?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, they have money for the state water plan dam construction, but this $650,000 is above, again, their base request.
Senator Petty.
So it was in there, but you have down, wasn't it in there as SGFs? And you've got, I'm not sure, what does the SWPF stand for?
Senator Peck.
The SWPF State Water Plan Fund.
Okay. So, but initially it was in the budget under SGF and not from the state water.
Senator Peck. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Okay, the agency did have the funds as a state general fund. The Legislative Budget Committee that met during the interim deleted the money. Then the House put the funds back in, not as SGF, but as State Water Plan Fund. I might note that the State Water Plan Fund, Mr. Chairman, currently is significantly over appropriated. So that was one of the thought processes for the committee, was the fact that, well, we're going to have to start whittling down the state water plan expenditures because you can't spend more than you have.
Senator Petty.
So just so I understand what you just said, you're saying that the state water plan is expending more than we have put into that? When we just started making this effort to address our state water needs through dedicating funds, but are you saying that now they're overexpending?
Senator Peck.
No, not exactly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'm saying is the House position spends more state water plan fund than is available in the fund. So I'm not saying that the agency is spending anymore. It's just that the House position, and we were dealing with, that was interesting, Mr. Chairman, we were dealing with the House position, we were dealing with the Ways and Means position, we were dealing with the Legislative Budget committee position. And it made it a little bit challenging to follow the bouncing ball sometimes. But again, it's just the House position spends more water plan funds than is available.
Senator Petty.
Thank you for that. Well, I know that since we've put that fund into place, we have had the ability to identify those needs that have been neglected for some time. And watershed dams are definitely in that category as well. I do have another question concerning the local farm to food program. The recommendation here is to delete the 900,000 SGF. So again, was that in the initial request of the department, or was that put in by the House?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That was a part of the base budget of the agency. So the House just concurred with the agency's request. But again, Mr. Chairman, this is money that the majority of the committee felt like we don't want to continue down this road. We did it last year for the first time ever. Before that, it was federal for a few years. And it's just kind of one of those situations where it's like, okay, there's no use continuing adding programs, and this is one that we felt like could be handled elsewhere. But to answer the senator's question, this was part of the base budget from the agency.
Senator Petty.
So that was in the base budget. And so so doesn't the farm to food program benefit both farmers and low income participants to use more, have the availability of more fresh foods that come directly from Kansas farmers?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. $900,000 across the state of Kansas is not that significant amount of money, but the answer would be yes, some farms do benefit, some food banks do benefit. Again, the question in my mind, is this a function of government? And the answer in my mind is no.
Senator Petty.
Well, I guess I have to disagree with that, since it's so important to have healthy Kansans that are able to work, and also farmers that are being able to make the best use of their crops. And that's one of the things that the local farm to food program does. It helps the farmers to be able to get their produce to the markets, and it also helps Kansans to be able to get healthy foods. So we do have healthy, productive workers, which I think is important for all of Kansas. So I think this program has greater benefits than the amount of money that you have just suggested we withdraw from the budget.
Other questions? Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On that deleting the $650,000 on watershed dam construction, I'd got some more information on that. We got so much information that goes on. But just a couple highlights that made me reconsider that. Kansas is the second highest number of water structures in the country behind Texas. Of the 6,400 dams in the state, 2,500 are state regulated. There's 328 high potential hazard dams. High hazard is risk of significant loss of life and damage to critical infrastructures. 176 are significant potential hazard dams, and there's a definition for that. But the state receives funding from FEMA for those structures that are state regulated. If a dam is a state regulated and up to date on inspection, it can qualify for cost sharing funding on repairs. So an example, there was a Spencer Dam in Nebraska, was only 26 feet tall, and its failure in 2019 caused a loss of life. During 2019, last year, the state of Kansas had significant flooding, so we haven't had any since then. So I'm saying we need to kind of stay focused on that. So amount $650,000 is not a lot of money, but I think anything we could put in there would not be a bad investment. So.
Questions for Senator Fagg? Senator, are these private dams or public,
State regulated, I know, was part of that. That was kind of my question. I want to work on state. I really don't work on the private dams as much as I do the state stuff, so
but you,
I don't know that question.
I'm just curious if, what we're talking here.
I just, this is a big enough issue that we need to consider. That's where I'm coming from. So 650,000 is not a lot of money in this. And even if we did something less than that, anything we can do would be a step in the right direction.
Senator Peck, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would draw your attention to the blue sheet because that also helps you understand on the back that the water plan fund is over appropriated. But if you look under the Department of Agriculture, you will see that in the watershed dam construction, which is about 2/3 of the way down, it was 3.65 million, and the 2025 recommendation from Senate Ways and Means was 3 million. So that's a difference, as you can see, of 650,000. So my point is there's still $3 million here for the dam, the construction of dams.
Senator Fagan.
Somehow the inspection is a big part of this. You know, that we go out and identify which ones that we need. It comes into that. So I don't know how much that fits into the 3 million. I don't know if we can have anybody comment on that or not that'd be in the audience. So I think the money to understand where we're at and what problems we have out there is kind of important. So whether 3 million, sure not going to cover that number I'm looking at there. So, but I'm okay whatever we do.
Senator Peck, you want to respond? Okay. Any other questions? Senator Peck, would you like to continue? Or was you done? You're
I
done?
am pretty much wrapped up.
Okay.
I've made the motion.
If there's no other questions, we'll vote. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Peck.
So I guess you want me to follow the agenda, Mr. Chairman, of KDH?
Yes, next we'll have Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Senator Peck.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I do need to back up. We had some clarifying language that we realized after we had made our Budget Committee report. So I don't know when you want me to offer this for the Department of Agriculture. It would be a balloon amendment for some clarifying language.
Okay, you want to go back to Department of Agriculture and add some language?
If you
Yes,
wish.
yes, no, let's get it cleaned up right away, so. Pardon me? Yeah, well, that's what we're done. So we're going to go ahead and reopen the Kansas Department of Agriculture so we can add an amendment. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just designed to clarify that if there's some money comes from the federal government, because we put some money in for matching, and so if they don't, then this money, there's $350,000 would be lapsed. And so you can see in the balloon there what the language is, but it's designed, this was brought to me by the department because of our discussion in the committee, that we wanted to make certain that if we put money in for matching, that it does go for matching. And if the federal government doesn't carry their bargain, carried through with their promise, then, okay, well, that money that we gave you for matching goes away.
Okay, would you like to make a motion?
I would move that we adopt the balloon as presented for.
We have a motion, second by Senator Peterson. Discussion. Senator Petty.
So Senator, you said this was brought to you by the Department of Agriculture, is this correct?
Senator Peck.
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, yes.
And so I'm reading, is this specific amount of matching funds that are being deleted if the federal funds don't come in, is that specific to food safety and inspection services?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's 350,000. I'm sorry, I missed the last part. Is it specific to,
Well, I'm reading the box, the second box on the amendment that says it's provided by the Food Safety Inspection Services. So is it for that, or is it?
Senator Peck.
it's matching funds from the Kansas Department of Agriculture to receive funds from the United States Department of Agriculture for the Food Safety and Inspection Service. I'm sorry, I'm guess I'm not 100% clear if I'm answering the question or not.
Senator Petty.
Right, that was my question, if that's what it's, if those federal funds don't come in, then these state dollars are withdrawn, and it's those, are those dollars that are specific for food safety and inspection services?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, again, matching funds is for, and it's a little hard to see because of the dark lines there, but it's for meat and poultry inspections. So it'd be, the $350,000 would be lapsed and go back to state general fund, is my understanding.
Senator Petty.
In that specific, for that, those, just as you said, for those specific areas of meat and poultry inspections. So if we don't get the federal funds, we're lapsing the state funds in that specific area. That's what I'm hearing you're saying, and the box reflects that. Is that correct?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Now we'll move on to Kansas Department of Health and Environment. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Division of Environment, for fiscal year 2025 on page 3 of the Budget Committee report. We concur with the House Committee of the Whole recommendations for 2025 with one adjustment, and that is to delete 8.1 FTEs in fiscal year 2025. And Mr. Chairman, this puts us in agreement with or concurs with the Legislative Budget Committee. And the reason we did this is the House had put these positions back in, so we thought, well, we want to agree with the Legislative Budget Committee and delete these 8.5 positions. And so that's the 2025. I would move that we accept the Agriculture Committee recommendation for the Department of Health and Environment for fiscal year 2025.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Fagg, seconds. Questions? Senator Petty.
Could you, Senator, excuse me, could you share where those positions are in health and environment? Doesn't say anything.
Wait a minute, that's 5.
Yeah, this is Mr. Chairman.
Senator Fagg.
Mr. Chairman, while they're looking there, just a suggestion that I'm looking back, it says the Budget Committee notes that the agency indicates funding is available for the FTEs, and I think it's federal money that's out there, if I remember reading something somewhere.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is correct. The agency's making some adjustments with their FTEs. Agency-wide, so again, a little difficult for someone like myself to follow agency FTEs and where they're putting them, where the funding's coming from. But we were told that these positions would be funded with federal dollars. The thought process, because I'm the one that made this recommendation, is we've got already every agency in the state of Kansas has significant number of FTEs that are just kind of hanging out there, if you will. So it's the position of the chair, and the committee, enough of the committee agreed that we would delete them, that the agency then could shift some positions around.
Other questions for Senator Peck? Senator Petty.
So I'm looking on page 15 in our budget book, and for 25, the information that they provided about moving those positions around, but I'm not seeing where those positions, so you're saying that those positions were federally funded?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That is what we were told.
I'm sorry, I see that was up there, so I don't have that information that you would have had in the presentation. But so here's my follow-up question then. So with this recommendation of deleting the 8.1 FTE positions in 25, those are already budgeted positions, and would that then, the department then be impacted with that 1.5, well, I guess that, so this would be over and above freezing any unfilled positions?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the question was, this would be over and above freezing any unfilled positions, as I heard it, and I don't have an answer for that question. I would have to try to get an answer.
Senator Fagg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If the House position's 8.1 to add and we're subtract, isn't that something they could take to conference and go from there? Just a thought.
Thank you. Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess to the point that was being made earlier, isn't it the situation that we only get the money if if it's not adequately funded?
Senator Peck.
Sorry, I wasn't paying attention. So something about if we only get the money if the FTEs are available?
Well, if you want to go ahead and answer that first question, you was getting your information. We hate to catch you in the middle of a conversation.
On page 15, number 7, it mentions that the agency adds 8.1 positions, and then they later it talks about they're eliminating FTE adjustments across all programs, including an increase of 3.9 positions for air quality, et cetera. So it's the agency moving positions around as they deem necessary within their agency. And that was the reason that the chair recommended the deletion of the 8 positions. They could shift some current positions around to utilize the federal funds.
Does that answer your question, Senator Petty?
I was looking at page 15, and so it appears that they're moving the positions around, not adding positions, but you're deleting the positions they've moved around. Is this correct? I mean, the recommendation is to delete the positions that the Department of Health and Environment has recommend that they are moving around. You're now recommending that those positions be deleted?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They were actually adding the FTE positions and then moving many others around. And this committee, the Ways and Means, or actually, I guess it was the Legislative Budget Committee, had deleted unfilled or unfunded positions or something. That's, again, a challenge to sometimes keep track of all the movements.
Thank you.
But the ultimate, Mr. Chairman, was that the committee felt like the agency would be just fine without these positions.
Senator Holscher, back to your question.
I think I got it.
Okay. Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Peck, we'll move on to,
Mr. Chairman, we need to get fiscal year 2026 for the agency.
oh, excuse me, yeah, okay. Move on to 2026.
The committee, again, deleted the positions in 2026. We can discuss that again at length if we need to. We delete $500,000 of state water plan funding for watershed restoration projects plan. In essence, this money was moved to the John Redmond dredging for within the State Water Office. And again, Mr. Chairman, that's where if all of the state water plan funds were expended in one agency versus multiple agencies, it would be easier to follow. But this deletion was made so that there would be funds within the State Water Plan Office for John Redmond dredging. Number 3, delete $500,000 from the Local Environmental Protection Program for rural groundwater septic system and well testing in fiscal year 26. We were told by the agency, because I made a note, I thought, well, this is strange. The agency said that they were resurrecting this program. I don't know how long this program was in the grave, but they were wanting to resurrect it. And so the committee just deleted it and said, well, we're not convinced it's time to resurrect. Number 4, add language directing the agency to report to the State Finance Council regarding the improvements made to the tanks program, which this is an underground storage tanks program, usability prior to funding being released to the KEIMS, and that stands for something, Kansas Environmental Information Management System. Database improvements for 2026. So basically, that's just a report. So, Mr. Chairman, I would move that the Ways and Means Committee accept the Agriculture Committee recommendation for the budget for the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, Division of Environment.
I have a motion. We have a second. Senator Fagg seconds. Discussion. Questions? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll move on to Department of Wildlife and Parks. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources concurs with the House Committee the whole's recommendation for fiscal year 2025. So I would move that we adopt or accept the committee recommendation for Wildlife and Parks for fiscal year 2025.
Motion, we have a second. Senator Peterson seconds. Questions on 2025? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed, motion carries. We'll move on to 2026.
Thank you, Mr.
Senator
Chairman.
Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources concurs with the Senate Committee on Ways and Means recommendation for fiscal year 2026 with the following adjustments. And before I get to the adjustments, the Wildlife and Parks receives over $4 million from EDIF, and that funding was deleted by this committee. So we decided, well, they're going to need a little bit of money. So we added $398,000 plus EDIF for parks operations, $292,000 plus of EDIF money for operating expenditures for fiscal year 2026. And so again, this reinstates some of the deleted EDIF money that was taken from the agency and Just as a note from me, the chair, the Senate position still has a reduction of $3.8 million to the agency from the EDIF, which I'm confident we're going to have a global discussion on EDIF. But the committee recommendation was specifically to these two areas, and that was it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will move that we adopt the Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee report or recommendation for Department of Wildlife and Parks.
We have a motion, we have a second. Senator Alley seconds. Discussion. Senator Petty.
Senator, could you remind us where Department of Wildlife and Parks, where they get their funding?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. They receive several fee funds from different licenses and park fees, but they also receive some EDIF money, some of the lottery money. So it's I don't even have a list, but I know it's from several different fee sources. So none of it is state general fund money.
Senator Petty.
I thought they couldn't use fee funds in the parks. Senator, I thought they couldn't use fee funds in the parks.
Senator Peck.
I don't have knowledge as to where funds are restricted use, but our fiscal analyst reminded me that they have dozens and dozens of fee funds from boating to licenses, et cetera. So to answer the question, I don't have an answer. I can try to get one if we need to.
Senator Petty.
He's getting, well, I just, you know, this, us putting, well, the Senate committee putting this amount in, and as the chairman of this subcommittee said, that's still deleting 3.8 million from the Department of Wildlife and Parks, and that is over 24% of their budget when that amount of money is deleted. So it's more like 25% of their budget when that is deleted. I thought that our parks helped us serve as an economic engine for our state, and I just might remind this committee, and I'm sure this came up in discussion in Senator Peck's committee, that next year we will be hosting the World Cup, and particularly the eastern part of our state, our parks should be an attraction point and may also be a place where some of those coming for those games under the World Cup might be staying. If the funding is not available to maintain our parks, then with this kind of deletion, then it seems to me we could look at park closures and employee layoffs, and I don't know how we can maintain them. I look at the parks in my area, and I'm assume that the rest of us do as well, as being a benefit to those that live here and a draw for those who don't. So this certainly is a costly cut, and I'm not seeing how it benefits Kansan. So did that discussion come up at all in your looking at this budget?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No.
Senator Petty.
That was brief. I think it should have, and I think we should be considering this as we look at this budget.
Other questions? Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, Senator Peck, I'm wondering if you can tell me the practical implications of that type of a budget cut.
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You will notice on the front of the Budget Committee report that the fiscal year 2026 total is $124 million, almost $124 million. So a $4 million cut Certainly, if that sticks, which I don't expect it to, but if that sticks, it's, depending on a person's perspective, doable. But I do not have knowledge as to where they would make any reductions, where they would let some things slide. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Was the $124,000 for the garden veterans licenses considered to be included in the $398,000 in operations funds we added back in, or are we just leaving that up to the agency?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. No, we did not. And
Senator
that was an oversight on my part.
Senator Peterson.
You might want to add the $124,000 back in if that's not included in the in that $398,000 for park operations.
Senator Peck.
That would be up to, thank you, Mr. Chairman, that would be up to the will of the committee if they wanted, because that was not discussed during the committee process in the Agriculture Committee.
Senator Peterson, if you want to make a motion to add that, we can see what the committee decides.
Yes, I do. I'd like to make a motion to add the $124,000 for National Guard and veteran licenses for fiscal year 2026.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Senator Fagg seconds. Discussion. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The only thing, I'm supportive, but where's the money come from? Where's the $124,000 come from? Would it be adding back in EDIF? That would be my question, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Peterson, where would you like to get the money?
EDIF.
Okay. Other questions for Senator Peterson? Senator Petty.
Senator Peterson, where is that 124,000 reflected in the budget? And what page are you?
Senator Petty. Right here on- It's on the back of the
Thank you.
last page.
Thank you.
Other questions for Senator Peterson? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Back to Senator Peck. Do you have anything else? Okay. Any other questions for Senator Peck? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have, that was 26, yep, okay. Now we'll have the Kansas State Fair. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources concurs with the House Committee of the Whole's recommendation for fiscal year 2025 with the following adjustment. Add language directing the State Fair to submit a report to the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources and the House Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources budget during the 2026 legislative session on securing $1.8 million in non-state monies for the construction of an emergency command center in fiscal year 2025. Mr. Chairman, this goes back to the fact that the legislature has discussed and the agency has asked for funding for an emergency command center to be built on land owned by the state fair, but it would be utilized by several other law enforcement agencies, Reno County, City of Hutchinson, potentially Highway Patrol. So we thought that rather than the state appropriating all of the money, when we've got local entities that are going to be utilizing the command center as much or probably even more than the state, that they should have some skin in the game. And so that's what this language is all about. And so I would move that we accept or adopt the Senate Ag and Natural Resources Committee report as relates to the state fair for fiscal year 2025.
I have a motion, second by Senator Peterson. Discussion. We have a motion and a second and no questions. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have 2026. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources concurs with the Senate Committee on Ways and Means recommendation for, I think that should be fiscal year 2025. For fiscal year 2026 with the following adjustments. The reason I paused is because my copy had the wrong year. We delete 135,000 SGF for state fair operating expenditures for fiscal year 2026. Number two, add 365,152 of state general fund to pay off debt service obligations on the Expo Center rehabilitation and language directing the agency to make such payment only if the debt is deemed callable for fiscal year 2026. Just a little bit of information on those two recommendations. The debt service on the debt from the state fair is $188,000 a year. So by deleting $135,000 for their operations, they still are money ahead. But the balance, if they were to leave the bond in place or the debt in place, would be over $700,000. So it's a significant savings if we can pay this off early. I know there was discussion by some committee members, particularly those in the banking industry, that the interest rate's low. And but in any event, this was the committee recommendation. So I would make a motion that we accept the Natural Resources Committee report as relates to the budget for the Kansas State Fair.
I have a motion, I have a second by Senator Fagg. Questions and discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the Kansas Water Office. Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually disappointed we're getting right to the last one. I'm having so much fun here. I'm thinking about just grabbing some other agencies and making some budget cuts recommendations. But in any event, that's not what you asked for, so I'm not going to go down that road. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources concurs with the House Committee of the Whole recommendation for fiscal year 2025. So with that, I would move that we accept the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee recommendation for the budget for the Kansas Water Office for fiscal year 2025.
I have a motion, we have a second by Senator Peterson. Discussion. Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Senator Peck, we'll move on to 2026.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources concurs with the Senate Committee on Ways and Means recommendation for fiscal year 2026 with the following adjustments. Number one, delete 2.5 million state water plan fund for water planning and project development for fiscal year 2026. They will still have $1 million. That's just a note of mine. Number two, delete 1.5 million of state water plan funding for the Water Projects Grant Fund for fiscal year 2026. They will still have $11.5 million. Number three, delete $800,000 state water plan fund for aquifer monitoring and remodeling? It says modeling. I didn't realize that we would model something like that, but in any way, in fiscal year 2026. Number four, delete $250,000 state water plan fund for independent program evaluation for fiscal year 2026. They still have $360,000 there. Number five, add $3 million state water plan fund for the John Redmond dredging project for 2026. And of that $3 million, 1.5 will come from HB 2302 projects. And then we deleted 1.5 million from KDA Conservation Reserve Enhancement Program. That's where the $3 million comes in. Number six, add the $2 million transfer from the EDIF to the State Water Plan Fund for 26, basically reinstating what the Ways and Means Committee had done previously. Number 7, committee requests a report on the status of investments relating to the debt service associated with Milford and Perry reservoirs be presented to the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources and Senate Committee on Ways and Means. Number 1, number 3, and number 4, Mr. Chairman, were not in the original agency request, so therefore the committee, since the agency did not originally request them, felt like must not be needed. They were put in by the House, so we deleted number 1, 3, and 4. I'll be glad to stand for, well, I'll make a motion, I'll stand for questions. I make a motion that the Senate Ways and Means Committee accept the Senate Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources recommendation for the budget for the Kansas Water Office for fiscal year 2026.
We have a motion. We have a second. Senator Fagg seconds. Discussion. Senator Holscher.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I don't know if I completely caught that. Did you say 1, 3, and 4 were the affected numbers that you indicated weren't in the agency request?
Senator Peck.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, number 1, number 3, and number 4 were not in the agency's original request.
Other questions? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. That concludes our budget report outs from the Ag and Natural Resources. Senator Peck, thank you. You did a great job. Committee, that concludes our work for today. And I wanted to let everybody know that this blue sheet is a new shorthand. So take your blue sheets along with you. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you.